We're looking at how to transform equations, and basically that's just a fancy way of what the book wants you to do today, which is basically they give you a variable, so they give you a letter that they want you to solve for, and your goal is to try and move things around so that that variable is basically by itself on one side. So, what makes this a little challenging is that there's barely any numbers. They're all symbols and letters. And so, what the point of it is that we want to make sure you get down the process of how to solve equations. So, I've written down some steps for you, or a checklist, kind of what we did with PEMDAS. And so this will hopefully help you guys in solving these and solving any equation in general. These are always the 3 steps you should look for. So the first one, you should always look to see if there's something to add or subtract. And remember that looks even something just like having, okay, these things are being added together because what's separating them is a plus sign, right? Then if after you've checked to see if you can add or subtract something, see if you need to multiply any denominators to cancel them out. So maybe you're in a situation that looks like this. Okay, 2 over 3x equals 6. So you've moved everything over. There's nothing to add or subtract, right? Because there's no plus or minus separating anything here. So to get rid of that denominator, you want to get rid of the denominator first. So multiply both sides by whatever the denominator is. Okay, so what that would look like would be 3. So we end up with 2x equals 18, which leads me to the step 3. And the last part of this is to get rid of that 2, which is being multiplied to the x. Again, we know it's being multiplied because there's no plus or minus separating it. So to get rid of something to multiply, you're going to divide last. Okay? And so those are the steps that you want to take to be able to solve. So let's look at number 1. So basically what the book is going to do is they will give you some equation like this, barely any numbers, right? All symbols and variables, and then they'll give you a letter they want you to solve for. So in this case, it's H, okay? So the way I like to do this is I like to think of it like this. So my friend H wants to stay at home all by himself. So for him to be able to stay at home, he needs to get rid of everything around him. Okay, so what's around him? We have this 2, this pi, and this r. Okay, so first check, is there anything to add or subtract? No, okay, because the 2, the pi, and the r, there's no plus or minus separating them. So remember, when all things are just next to each other like this with no plus or minus, it means that they're being multiplied together. Okay? Multiply denominators to both sides. Step 2. Is there anything that has a denominator here? There's no fraction, so no. Okay? Number 3, divide. Okay? So let's just divide everything. Everything's being multiplied, right? The 2 pi r. Why don't we just multiply both sides by 2 pi r? And what happens? The 2's cancel out, the pi's cancel out, and the r's cancel out. So what's the only thing that I have left on that right side? The only thing I have left is h. And then on the left side I have s divided by 2 pi r. Now is my friend h by himself in his house? He is, so that's my final answer. Okay. Now in number 2 I changed it up a little bit. So again, we're still solving for h, just as you can see right there. Okay, but my friend h is right here. So what is this equation saying? This equation is saying s equals 2 pi r h plus 2 pi r. So let's go through the steps. Is there anything to add or subtract? Okay, looking. Oh, here's a plus sign, which means that I have something that's being added. So this guy, this 2 pi r, is being added. So what I need to do is I need to subtract this over to both sides. Okay. And so what that looks like is, remember these guys cancel out, and on the right side I have s, this s that was there originally, minus the 2 pi r equals 2 pi rh. Okay, remember I want to leave this guy alone. Are there any multiplied denominators to both sides? Is there any denominator here? So there's no denominator here, right? And so the only thing I have to do now is to divide everything that's left over. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2 pi r. This cancels out, and that cancels out. These two do not end up canceling out, and that's mainly because this s minus, once I have a minus sign here, it becomes ineligible to cancel out, okay? So if that s minus wasn't there, it would be okay to cancel those guys out too, but since this s minus is up there on the top, it's kind of like they're joined together now, so you can't cancel them out. So final answer for this would look like this. S minus 2 pi r divided by 2 pi r equals h. Okay? And that is what that final answer will end up looking like there. Alright, moving on here. Let's look at number 3 and 4 and 5 eventually. Okay, so right now, in number 3, they're asking me to solve for s, so I'm going to circle that so I remember. And so my s is right here, okay? So first, let's look and see if there's anything to add or subtract. And excuse my makeshift drawing. So something you guys will learn about me is that I cannot draw anything to save my life. And so, just excuse it, get a good laugh from it. Sorry. But here we go. Okay, so s wants to stay by itself. Let's go through our steps. Looking here, is there anything to add or subtract? I see no plus or minus sign, so no. We'll multiply by a denominator. Is there any denominators you see in number 3? There are no denominators here. So last step would be to divide by everything that's left over. And you know these are all being multiplied together again because they're all crammed together onto one line. No separation of plus or minus. So what am I dividing? I'm dividing this decimal. 0.7854 times d squared. And I want to leave that s there, so I'm not going to put an s here, otherwise it's going to cancel out. But I am going to put that n, okay? So what happens here is the number ends up canceling out, the d squareds end up canceling out, the n ends up canceling out, and on the other side of I forgot to divide both sides here, so let's write it on this side too. And so everything cancels out on the right side except for s. And on the left side, what I'm left with is p divided by 0.7854 d squared n. And that's it. I accomplished my goal of getting s by itself. And there it is. Okay? Let's look at 4. So in 4, the letter I have to solve for is r. Okay? So here's my r right here. I'll put them in a little box this time. And so let's go through the steps. Is there anything being added or subtracted here? This s squared is being added to that, right? So let's move that s squared over. Okay. So once I do that on the right side, they cancel out. And I end up with a, the a that was already there, minus x squared equals 2rs. Okay, I'm going to box him again so I know I don't want to move him. Is there any denominators here? Anything to get rid of? Any fractions? No. So let's just divide by whatever we're trying to get rid of now. Okay, so in this side, need to get rid of the 2. Need to get rid of the s. Cancel, cancel. A minus s squared over 2s equals r. And then we close there. Okay, very good. And so again, these s's can't cancel because there's a minus sign. There's an a minus there, so once you have something being added or subtracted, it's ineligible to cancel, okay? Another thing I want to show you here is that why did we move this negative s squared over first? Well, we want to leave, these are r's BFFs, so you don't want to move anything that's attached to the variable we're solving for until the very end because they're attached to each other. That's like their family, so you can't separate them till the very, very end. So move everything else over first if you can. That's why we got rid of the s squared first instead of the 2 and the s, because they were glued to him. Okay, and we'll move on to 5. So last problem, number 5, why don't you guys try this one by yourselves? And of course I'll work it out on here, but I just won't talk anymore to guide you through it. And so then when you're done, you can just check the answer here, okay? So circle what you're solving for, put a box or a house around that matching letter in the equation, and go from there.